If I move away, if I did this instead of stand behind the lectern, would that work out for you, or is it too close? Maybe bring that back a little bit. I like to be closer to the audience. All right. Yeah. Well, let's think. What would be a good place for you? This pole, an anti-Semite, I know right away. This anti-Semitic, the pole. What do you expect? So, this pole in mittendrin.
Rabbi, did I ever tell you your mannerisms very much like Jackie Dixon?
A lot. I hope not now, because he passed away. So, but yeah, people do say that to me. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I flew in from Eretz Yisrael. By the way, those of you in the back, the crowd is not that large. You can come a little bit closer. I mamish won't say a word. I will announce it on the PA system, who you are, where you live, and I'm going to ask you how come. But besides that, there won't be any problem at all. That's all. For those of you who joined me last night, all of my work, not virtually, all of my work is devoted to helping Jews in the church return back to the truth and the beauty of the Jewish faith, and then help Jewish people who have never got involved in Christianity learn more about their Yahadus, using Christianity as a foil to reflect back the truth and the beauty of the Jewish faith. Stam, to make a Christian into an atheist is not an accomplishment. About 8 years ago, I received a phone call from an Indonesian organization, Eitz Chaim. Indonesia is home to the largest Muslim community in the world. Indonesia is the 4th largest country in the world. There are more Muslims in Indonesia than there are Arabs, period. About 240 million. But there are a sizable number of Christians there, about 40 million, and then there's all sorts of other groups. As it turns out, Indonesia had a problem with its some 10,000 Jews. Many of them had become Christians. How did something like that ever occur? Indonesia gained its independence following the Japanese occupation during World War II. And the person who was squarely behind in the Indonesians' effort to seek independence from the Dutch colonization was none other than Haj Amin al-Husseini, Yamach Shemay V'Zichroi, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, was a real virulent anti-Semite, who was the one who was the instigator of the pogroms in Yerushalayim, in Hebron, a lot of blood on his hands. And in Indonesia, when it became independent, they recognized they recognized 6 religions. So on your Tudat Zuhut, on your national identification card, you could choose one of 6 religions, and Judaism was not one of them. Although in the Quran, Judaism, the Jewish people, the Jewish faith, we're the people of the book, we are a protected people, but somehow the largest Muslim country in the world did not recognize Judaism. Now, unlike what you heard from Rabbi Mendelovich last night, practicing Judaism in Indonesia was not illicit. You could have a minyan in your house, you can pray, anything you want. Only thing is that on your national ID card, you had to select a religion. And many of the Jewish people there said, all right, we'll put on the card Christianity. We'll just put it on there. So What happened? What were the consequences? At the moment, really none. At the moment, these people continued on their religious life. They had minyanim, kashrus, everything was not a problem. There is a caveat here already. There is one caveat, and that caveat is that if you chose Christianity on your national ID card, your Indonesian national ID card, then your children had to go to a public school that's assigned for Christians. In the Far East, even though Indonesia is a democracy, but it's not like American democracy where that would be unimaginable. In Indonesia, like in Malaysia, like in the areas of the Far East, like in the Philippines, your public school is assigned to you based on your religion, even though all those three countries are democracies. But it's not American-style democracy. So the children went to Christian schools and were then exposed to everything that would go along with that problem, and then their grandchildren would. And I don't think it requires an advanced degree in nuclear chemistry to figure out that it would only take a few generations and so many Indonesian Jews would become Christians. But they knew that they had a Jewish background. They knew of their Jewish ancestry. And they were willing to speak to me. There was a funder, there was a person in Indonesia who was willing to underwrite. He said, I was called. There's a person in Indonesia who's willing to underwrite for you to fly to the island of Papua. Papua is one of 17,000 islands in Indonesia. Geographically, it is the largest. Jayapura, its capital. And I am willing to bring in at least 500 Jews, Indonesian Jews, to spend 3 days with you. You study with them. More importantly, you answer their questions. And then they will decide if they want to continue on as Christians or they want to do tshuva and return back to the Jewish faith. And I said, I just won the lottery. For me this was. And when we say the other side of the world, if you put a needle through Stanford, Connecticut, through a globe, it comes out the other side in Jayapura. I mean, literally, if you wanted to fly from Indonesia to New York, it makes no difference whether you fly east or west. None at all. It's the same. I mean, literally, Ekwelt is the other side of the world. This was an unbelievable thing for me. And we gathered. And I had 3 days to convince them. They came with their pastors, leaders. The vast majority of them were Jewish, fully Jewish. And then for 3 days, they probed me. They asked me the most pressing questions about Jesus and Judaism and why Judaism does not accept the Christian Messiah. There were almost 800 people that attended. They told me that when the 3 days were over, they were going to vote whether they believe in Jesus or not. And it began. Exhausted but excited, I landed in a place that they greeted me at the airport. This is a Muslim country with Israeli flags. I thought I was in another planet. I'd seen a lot in my life, but to see Israeli flags dancing in the airport of Jayapura just blew my mind away. And for 3 days, intensive questioning, asking, and explain to them what the church had done to them, how the church altered the Jewish scriptures in order to make it appear Christological. Go back to Tanakh, go back to the original. HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves you. He wants a personal relationship with you. V'gam netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. And the glory of Israel does not lie. Ki lo odom hu lihinochem. Because he's not a man that he will change his mind. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 29. Let them repeat that in the Vatican. Let them listen to that. That God is not a man, that he should lie. He's not a mortal, that he will change his mind. Al tiftachu b'nedivim v'ven she'ein lo teshuah. You said it every day, including this morning. Do not put your trust in princes or the Son of Man, wherein there is no salvation. There's a prophecy in the book of Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 13, the whole end of Sefer Zechariah. It's a small Sefer, 14 chapters. The end of Zechariah is all about the Messianic age and the redemption of the Goyim. All of it is. And it is triggered by a shayla that was asked by Babylonian Jews to Zechariah. They had a shayla. It's in Zechariah chapter 7. I hope something happens here this morning that will ignite a curiosity in you, that you will open up Sefer Zechariah. There was a shayla that the people had to go to Rav Cohen. They had to go to Rav Kavnevsky. What was the shayla in Zechariah chapter 7? They had a shayla like this. I'm not kidding. You might look it up for yourself. They had a shayla that here we were. These were the Shevavei Sion. 42,360 Jews had made Aliyah from Bavel, and that was the very first wave. How do we know 42,360? We not only know the number, we know all their names. That's what Ezra chapter 2 is. Ezra chapter 2 is a long chapter enumerating every single family that was the first wave that came to Eretz Yisrael on a promise and a dream by King Cyrus. No Jewish agency. No nefesh b'nefesh. And it was the first time in Jewish history, the first time, since Yehoshua ben Nun, Zechreinu Levracha, since he crossed the Jordan, there was only one period in Jewish history where there was not an Ish, there was not one Jew in Eretz Yisrael. Only one time, 50 years, Nun Shana, from the time that Gedaliah ben Achika was murdered on Rosh Hashanah following Churban Bayis Rishon, until and then Yirmiyahu, he had to go to Egypt with the whole chev around him. From that point until Cyrus makes the declaration, go back, there was not a Jew in Eretz Yisrael, none. Imagine what it means. Those are the first people who made Aliyah, and that's why their names are written in Tanakh. There were future waves. But those future waves came already. There was an establishment. There was a temple that was being built under the leadership of Yehoshua ben Yehoitzadok, who was the nephew of Ezra. And you had Zerubbabel, who was from Malchus David. You had two tzaddikim, and the whole second commonwealth was largely Jews who were not religious. And I want you to know that. If you read Sefer Nehemiah, Ezra, and Nehemiah is really one sefer, you'll see that the Jews who came back from Bevel to Eretz Yisrael in the first wave were largely, not all, but many of them were very irreligious. They were Mechalei Shabbos. It is very rare in Tanakh, very rare in Nach, to find criticism of Jews not keeping Shabbos. Why would we need to know this? Not for this program. Maybe we'll take some questions. We'll deal with this later. Come to this huge banquet hall packed with people, and questions and questions and questions. And it came to the third day. It was a Wednesday, and it was time for them to vote. They asked me, Rabbi, would you? And I left the room. It was only a few minutes when the pastor had a big smile on his face and said, Rabbi, come back in. He lifted up an Indonesian Bible. He opened it up with the Christian Bible and the Jewish Bible, Lahavdil, separate. in a Christian Bible, Malachi is the end of the Jewish Bible because they switch around the Nevi'im and the Ksuvim in the Christian Bible. If you ask me why, I'll explain to you why they do that. But at the exact point where the Jewish Bible ends in an Indonesian Bible, and the Christian Bible begins, he lifted it up, and everyone lifted it up with him. I thought I was dreaming. He took it by the binding, and he ripped it in half. He threw the Christian Bible on the floor, as did everyone in the congregation. And they started singing, Shalom Aleichem Malachei HaShoreis. Exactly. I thought I was dreaming. Here's a boy from Borough Park on a Wednesday night, island of Papua, hundreds of Jews singing Shalom Aleichem on a Wednesday night. I re-emphasize that. And that's what your thing is, what I'm thinking. That this doesn't seem real. They had done tshuva. They returned back to the Jewish faith, and they asked me, Rabbi, would you stay on as our rabbi? 3 churches were turned into synagogues. 516 Jews did tshuva. Many of them got married since, live in Yerushalayim. Lives were changed. In November of 2018, I came to Israel to debate a leading Christian theologian, apologist, at the King Solomon Hotel. Some of you here, I'm sure, watched that debate on YouTube. I don't know, maybe 1,000 people showed up. It was a packed house, and it was a very, very exciting evening. And after the program was done, people came to me. This is November 2018, bringing with them their friend. She's involved in the Messianic movement. Would you help her? A fellow bringing his friend. He's a Hasidic boy involved in Christianity. Would you help him? I was like, you're looking at me stunned, nishtaimim. I was shocked. It then occurred to me that what was happening in Eretz Yisrael as far as missionaries are concerned was a cancer that was stage 4. For those who don't know this, there is no such thing as stage 5. The situation in Eretz Yisrael was worse than I had ever imagined. I immediately realized that Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted me to make Aliyah, which I did on Aleph Kislev of Sivan in the following year, the following opportunity. And I've been living in Israel for 2.5 years, helping Jews in the church return back to the Jewish faith. There are in the United States roughly a little more than 1,000 Christian missions to the Jews. We estimate that the Messianic communities in Israel, Jews who have apostatized and become Christians in this country, is roughly equal to the Jewish population of Chicago. Roughly 300,000 Jews have been lost to the church here in the United States alone. Messianic congregations, churches that are designed to appear as though they're synagogues, all over this country. How did that happen? What does that even mean? Why are they interested in converting you and those that you love? Why are these missionaries? Every one of you heard of a group called Jews for Jesus. This is not the first time you ever heard of it because you sat here. You heard of Jews for, how did you ever hear of a group called, I don't know, Puerto Ricans for Jesus? No, this group, somehow you managed not to hear. Eskimos for Jesus? No. This Kinderlach, they want to convert the world. They do. But what is the obsession with the Jewish people? Why the Jews? Why there's so many missions to evangelize the Jews? Missions now in the Hasidic communities in Brooklyn to evangelize the Jews. Why? Why the effort to bring the Jewish people to the church? Why are they doing this? So you need to understand why this is. There are a number of reasons why the church prioritizes Jews for conversion. The first reason's very simple, and that is the New Testament says it in Matthew chapter 10, 4 and 5. You went to yeshiva, you know. Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and the city the Samaritans enter not, only go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So in the Christian Bible, it says, beferish, to convert the Jews, and that's more important than anything else. Romans chapter 1, verse 16. You remember in Kyle? I am not ashamed of the gospel. It's the power and salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and then to the Gentile. The New Testament places an emphasis on converting Jews. I remember I was speaking in Brooklyn. I was speaking in Brooklyn. A big crowd there. It was a big crowd. After you speak, people usually come over to you after your presentation and come over to ask you additional questions, whatever it is. You'll see after. So after I spoke, so there was a whole crowd around me. It was in Flatbush. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye, there's a man who I recognized. It was my 5th grade Rebbe. He was there, Rabbi Frankel, Zola Gesundsein. The same face, just the beard's a little whiter. And he's just watching this, marveled. And he finally got his turn to make his way in, and he said to me, I just want you to know, Tovia, if you would have known your Chumash like you know the New Testament, you would have been just fine. So number one, the New Testament prioritizes the conversion of the Jews to Christianity. The second reason is even more important and more germane to our time. And this reason has to do with eschatology. Eschatology is a fancy term. It means the study of the end times. These evangelical Christians believe firmly that Jesus cannot make a second coming unless you, the Jews, accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. It's based on a passage in Matthew chapter 23. Matthew chapter 23 is a flamethrower, a virulently anti-Jewish chapter, even by New Testament standards, which is quite a bar to pass by. But Matthew 23 begins by saying that actually the Pharisees, meaning Orthodox Jews, sit in the seat of Moses. They believed in Torah Shebiksav, Torah Sheba'al Peh. These were not Karaites. But the Jews are the worst things in the world. And at the end of Matthew 23, verse 39, we are told, Jesus says, I will not return unless you say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. Because when Jesus, we are told, makes this statement in Matthew 23, he is speaking before a Jewish audience. The church historically understands it to mean one thing. What Jesus is actually saying is, I cannot make my second coming unless the Jewish people are converted to Christianity. And therefore, the Jews, you, ladies and gentlemen, you are holding up the show. You're holding it up. It is only the conversion of a Jew to Christianity that could trigger the second coming of Jesus. It is only the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel that can bring about the final second coming of Jesus. Only that. And they support Israel, deeply support Israel. The Jews must be in Israel. They have all sorts of programs. When I moved to Eretz Yisrael from Indonesia, they were willing to pay for my crate to go from Indonesia to Israel. No, thank you. The effort to get Jews into the land of Israel, preparing us for a war of Armageddon that will trigger the second coming of Jesus, is in the Christian Bible. And the Jewish people, by their obstinance, by their stubbornness, refusing to accept Christ as their Messiah, that's what's holding it up. And therefore, we have to bring the Jews to Jesus now more than ever. The time has come. Are you ready to accept Jesus in your life? There's another reason for this. Why? This third reason, I think, is the most compelling, the most powerful of all. It's the psychological problem that the Jews posed to the church. Jesus was what? Jesus was a Jew. This every Jew knows. See that? One of our boys, he made it to the top of his field. That's unbelievable. Well, really, right? I was a Jew, every Jew, yeah, probably. Yeah. He's one of our boys. He made it to the top. I remember when Cardinal Lustiger from France, he was a Jew. He's a Jew. When he was a teenager, not a teenage shenishba, but when he was a teenager, he converted to Christianity and he became the Cardinal of France. And I remember when he was alive, people would ask me, "So, do you think that he might become the Pope?" I said, "I don't know if he will or not." He was a Jesuit, so I thought, I don't think that will happen. I said, "I tell you for sure one thing, if Cardinal Lustiger would ever become the Pope, all the Jews are walking around going like this, put their chests out, proud, look at that, one of my boys, he made it to the top of his field. Give a look at this." The credibility problem that the church poses that the Jewish people pose to the church is staggering. Jesus was a Jew, and the idea of a Messiah is uniquely Jewish. This will come as a surprise to some of you. The idea of Mashiach did not exist in the Greco-Roman world. It meant nothing. The word Christ meant nothing for the advent of Christianity. Nothing. Judaism was the only monotheism in the world. There was nothing else. And it was deeply admired in the Greco-Roman world because Alexander the Great had a relationship with Shimon HaTzadik. So therefore the Jews had a unique status. If we didn't fight with the Romans, if we didn't complain about taxes, they would have been let us go on. In fact, even after the revolts, Judaism was a licit religion in the empire. Completely legal. Christianity was not. The Jewish people have a reputation for being fairly intelligent. This didn't just start recently. And it didn't just start when Mark Twain spoke about the uniqueness of the Jewish people in the 19th century. The Jews always had a reputation for their intelligence. The Jews are the only people on earth that can read the Bible in its original language. The Jew is the only one that's hoping for the coming of the Messiah. It's a Jewish idea. So that if Jesus was the Messiah, who should have believed in him? Who? Obviously, the Jews. Yet the Jewish people said, with one voice, "We wish he was the Mashiach, but he's not." And therefore, it is only the conversion of a Jew to Christianity that can lend any credibility to that cross, never the conversion of a Gentile. I remember speaking in Texas. Now, when you're thinking Texas, you're thinking about the cities you've flown through. Many of you have flown through Dallas, spent time in Houston. No, this is a place called Nacogdoches, Texas. Okay, for those who don't know, Nacogdoches, Texas is right along the eastern border of the state of Texas, very close to Louisiana. That's Eckvelt, Texas. That's really Texas. Dallas this is it. And I was lecturing at the Allen F. Austin University for a Christian group that was there. The place was packed. It was a very exciting evening. It was so many people. It was really remarkable. And the people there just could not imagine, could not understand why the Jews don't accept it, why the Jews don't accept Jesus. The Jews of all people? I mean, our grandparents were there. Who was in Eretz Israel during the first third of the first century? Who was there? Puerto Ricans? No. Who was in Eretz Israel during the first century when Christianity emerged? It was the Jewish people, who are known for their intelligence, their knowledge of Tanakh, who it was not a good time. From the time Pompey entered Jerusalem in 66 BCE until, it was just not a good time. The first century was not an easy time in Eretz Israel. The Jews didn't accept Jesus as the Messiah, and therefore it is only the conversion of a Jew to Christianity that can lend any credibility to the cross. When I lectured at Allen F. Austin University, I could see a guy in the audience going, he was definitely unhappy with what I just said. And I asked him, what's on your mind? So he stood up like this. He said, Rabbi, I don't agree with anything you're saying. Isn't it true, he argued, that the first believers in Jesus were Jewish? Isn't it true that almost all the writers of the New Testament were Jews, with the exception of Luke, the Gentile physician, all Jews? The whole New Testament written by Jewish people, except for Luke, the Gentile doctor. I always found it interesting. The one non-Jew in the whole New Testament, a doctor. All right. So they were. But the question is, listen up. The question is, what sort of Jews should they have been? Should they have been our knowledgeable Jews, those who understood the Jewish faith, understood Tanakh, understood sacred scriptures, or those who knew nothing about the faith they've been asked to abandon? Obviously, there should have been, if the claim is true, that if you look at your own Bible, Jesus is there. You'll find him. He's bouncing off every page. Open the book of Isaiah. I'm going to pray for you. Jeremiah 31. He's right there. Daniel chapter 9 traces the exact moment of the cross. Open it now and pray to God to accept Jesus in your life. That's the claim of the church. The claim of the church is that it is the truth, the veracity of the Christian claim could be illustrated by your Old Testament. If that's the case, who should these first Jewish believers in Jesus have been? They should have been the Tanoim. But who were they? They were tax collectors and prostitutes, people who knew nothing about their faith. Who were the ones who said no? Who were the ones who said no? Were those who were knowledgeable. It's not an accident, my friends, that to this day, Peter was a married man, had children. We know that from the New Testament. If you want to find one of his grandchildren, good luck. They're not counted among the Jewish people today. A contemporary who also appears in the Christian Bible is Rabbi Gamliel Hazokin. Rabbi Gamliel appears prominently in the book of Acts. Why? If you'll ask me, I'll explain to you. But he's there. Okay? It's a Tana. Rabbi Gamliel lived precisely at that time in the first half of the first century. My great-grandmother is a direct descendant of Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel's descendants are here as Jews. Peter's children are lost. They lost the covenant. Only the conversion of the Jew to Christianity could relieve this anxiety, this pressing existential problem. In 1972, evangelical Christians gathered in western Switzerland, Lausanne, one of the oldest Jewish communities in Europe. 1972 is a critical time. Yerushalayim had been liberated only 5 years earlier. There was messianic fervor, not only in the Jewish world, but in the Christian world as well. Yerushalayim is in our hands. The liberation of Yerushalayim at that time was also prophesied in Daniel chapter 8, verse 14. For those of you who love Daniel, and if you don't know Daniel, 12 chapters, real easy, it's yummy. So we have Daniel chapter 8 is devoted to two kingdoms. The kingdom of Persia and the Greek Empire, and we are told explicitly that from the time that Alexander the Great is not mentioned, but from the time the Greek Empire would defeat the Persians, counting forward 2,300 years, Jerusalem would be liberated and cleansed by the Jews. When did Alexander the Great defeat? I don't know if there are any historians here. When did this happen? When the king of Macedon defeated Darius the Persian? The name of the battle? The Battle of Granicus, 334 BCE, late spring. Count forward 2,300 years, and you are on June 7th, 1967, to the hour. Evangelical Christians knew that the end was coming and the Jews needed to come to the cross. They gathered in Western Switzerland to study the Jewish people. They recognized that in the past the church had utterly failed to convert the Jewish people, and they wanted to understand what new techniques could be used to finally bring the Jewish people to the cross. And they found that, in fact, the church had two unique problems with converting Jews. The first problem they discovered was a public relations problem. Why don't the Jews want to become Christians? So they had a PR problem. What was the PR problem? Jewish people, they discovered, tend to equate Christianity with persecution. I know, right? They realize that Jewish people, when they see at Salem, they see a cross, they see a priest with a long thing, and here it's nothing. Here in America, you see a priest, he's just wearing a Roman collar, and there's a shawl, you see a priest, he's got the Shemayna Begudim on, he's got, helmets and outfits and things and chandeliers swinging like this, and smoke incense is coming out of his head, and he's got big shtup thing coming from the top. I mean, they have echte outfits that are unbelievable, and you can see when Jews pass them, go, yeah, bruch, give a look what's going on there, right? Here it's rain, it's anesthetized, it's America after all. But in Yerushalayim, you see, and you walk in the old city, you see things, you give a look at that, what they're doing over there. That's it. I never heard a Jew go, Jesus Christ. What am I to hear those words? Say it again, I want to get more nachas. Most Jews don't want to hear it, they never heard of it, it's good enough, it's close enough, they don't want it. Jewish people recognize, in Manhattan, real estate is so expensive, it's so valuable, that unlike any other place, churches in Manhattan are built right to the sidewalk. Because you can't have in Bala Kinwood, Pennsylvania, and you could just have a big lawn and the church is all the way, no, it's Mamish Raisi. St. John the Divine is right there, right in your nose as you're passing by. You can Mamish see it, what's going on, right? Even in Borough Park, Holy Ghost, this has a little lawn, but you can see when Jews give a look, when Jews are passing by a church, they timidly go, and then for a moment, out of curiosity, they go, I wonder what they're doing in there right now. And it's not a good thing. It's like watching, Holocaust videos, some dark video on Hitler's life on YouTube. It's just dark. Jews, the church's anti-Semitism is in our DNA. We're very aware of what is said about us, the hatred about us. The Shoah would never have been possible without the Christianity that shaped the thinking of not just Germans but Europeans and that's why, in fact, Japanese saved the Mir Yeshiva, Chinese saved Jewish people because they weren't Christians. They weren't poisoned by this toxic iteration. So therefore, they realized that Jews tend to equate Christianity with persecution, and they developed a technique that goes like this. You're Jewish? Are you Jewish? We love you. Baruch Hashem. We love the Jewish people. Oh, we love you. And we love Israel too. We're very, very, very pro-Israel. We love the Jewish people. Persecution, no. Any Christian that persecuted a Jew in the name of Jesus couldn't possibly be a real Christian, because a real Christian just loves the Jewish people. As though Martin Luther was a Hindu, you know. But that alone, of course, couldn't possibly work. It couldn't work because it negates the real reason why Jews don't want to be Christians. The reason why Jews don't want to be Christians, they realized, was that Jews don't want to stop being Jewish. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your cousin. I'm talking about someone you care about who may not be that observant to Jew, but Jewish people are generally, they're proud to be Jewish. When a Nobel Prize winners are announced in the newspapers, everyone's looking up. Is he a Jew? Not a Jew? Let me see. I got to look up. Jews are proud of their Jewish identity. We are a ethno-religious group. We are. There's nothing else like that in the world. We are both a nation and a faith, and we're proud. And Jewish people, they recognize, understand that by converting to Christianity, you cease to be Jewish. And most Jewish people do not want to leave their Jew. They don't want to stop being Jewish. And that's, my friends, where a second technique has developed that has been devastatingly successful. And the technique goes like this. When you're becoming a believer in Jesus, you are not converting to another religion. Oh, no. You're becoming a Messianic Jew, a completed Jew. I brought this with me to give you a lot of nachas this morning. This is a Messianic training manual on how, it's a training manual on how to share the Messiah with the Jew. You notice even the English word are really Hebrew characters. And they have a communications card of how to effect this. The training manual is very well put together. Things when speaking to a Jew that you ought to say, and when evangelizing a Jew you ought not to say. That's the big deal here. When speaking to a Jew, some of this is very good advice. Oh, here's a good advice. When witnessing to a Jew, avoid anti-Semitic terms. Okay. They actually, in case you're not sure what those terms are, they actually have a list of what those terms are, because you may not know, so they give you a list. Such as, Lamashal. It doesn't say Lamashal here. Such as, Jewing down. Don't use a term like Jewing down when. Kikes. Try not to use a term like kike when actually witnessing to a Jew. I would think it's pretty hard to backpedal once kikes is out there. It's hard to say, I was taken out of context. Who did that? Lewis, from Nation of Islam, Farrakhan, he said Judaism is a dirty religion, a gutter religion. And then when they confronted him, what do you mean? He said, I was taken out of context completely. Christ killers, also not a good idea. Dirty Jew, also not a good idea. And finally, Jew boy. Avoid jokes about the Jewish people, their money, etc. Some Jewish people are very sensitive about this. It's permissible for them to tell jokes about themselves, but it may be offensive for another to do it. This was sent out recently in Muncie. This is, if I ask you what is this book that I'm holding in my hands, some of you may have a guess what this might be. This was sent out in Muncie. It's put in Homes for the Aged in Eretz Yisrael and here in Rockland County. This is a Hebrew Yiddish New Testament sent to homes in Rockland County, which Rockland County is about 35% Jewish. If you send these out to Muncie, everyone who's going to receive this is going to be Jewish. The return address on these Yiddish New Testaments was the local synagogue. The communications card trains missionaries how to speak to Jews. A Messianic soul winner's card. When speaking to it, there are 2 columns on this card. There are 2 columns on this. The column on your right says, at the very top says, don't say. Do not say. Don't say. And the other column, the one on your left, says, oh, you could see from there. When witnessing to a Jew, don't say Jesus Christ. Apparently, Jesus Christ doesn't sound so Jewish. Do say instead, the Messiah Yeshua. That's nice. When witnessing to a Jew, don't say convert. Jews do not want to convert. Do say become a Messianic Jew, a completed Jew, a fulfilled Jew. Don't say become a Christian. Jews don't want to become Christians. Do say become a Messianic believer. 4, important. When witnessing to a Jew, don't say come to church. Do not say come to church. Jews generally do not want to go to church. They don't. You can't argue. Jews are not plotting to go to church. I never heard of a Jew go, woo, time for mincha, where's the church? I never heard this. Right? Jews generally don't want to go to church. They don't want to go to shul. How are you going to get them into a church? Say, come to a meeting of Messianic believers. Don't say New Testament, say Brit Chadasha. Messianic Passover Haggadah. There are Messianic Seders that take place not only here in the greater New York area, but you can go on Jews for Jesus website, put in your zip code, they'll tell you where the closest Messianic Passover Seder. You can enjoy a Messianic Passover Haggadah. If you went to one, don't go. But if you did, you would notice that the accoutrements on the table at the Passover Seder would be familiar with you, Manischewitz, the whole deal. However, once you listen to the ceremony, you'd realize there are some striking differences there. So they have their wine at their Messianic Passover Seders. But the wine, you'll be told, represents what? The blood of Jesus. And the matzah. Why do Jews have matzah at the Seder table? To represent the body of Jesus. And do you know the reason? Do you know the real reason why Jews have not 1, but 3 matzahs at the Seder table? Why? Vosep is 3 to represent the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Do you ever notice that matzahs are perforated? They have holes in them. You ever notice that? You think that's an accident? The matzahs are perforated because Jesus was perforated. He had holes in him. The only way that middle matzah is broken, Jesus, and wrapped in a white shmata, wrapped in a white towel, because Jesus was wrapped in a white shroud. You know why that matzah is hidden behind the Father? Because Jesus was hidden away in the tomb. You know why that matzah, the afikomen, is brought back at the end of the Seder? Because Jesus will return. Every aspect of Jewish worship has been altered in order to make it appear Christological. One point I should make, and I don't want anyone thinking here that all Christians are involved in this sort of chicanery and this aggressive effort. The Roman Catholic Church today is not involved in Jewish evangelism, and neither is the Orthodox Church. It doesn't mean there aren't Jews who wind up in those churches, but they're not involved in this. The people we're speaking about today are the Christian right, the evangelical born-again Christians. These are the Christian Zionists. These are the people who are, it's called, the fancy term is premillennial dispensationalism. Premillennial dispensationalism, these are the people who believe that the church had made a monumental error in that the Jews were always chosen. The Catholic Church insists that the Jews are no longer chosen. The Orthodox Church believes that the blessings that were originally given to the Jewish people have been abrogated completely, and the church is the new Israel. In fact, there are many names for this type of theology. It can be called replacement theology, covenant theology, new Israel theology, Hatzad Hashavah Shebahem. What these all have in common is that the church is the new Israel, and the Jewish people have lost their chosenness, and therefore the church could never recognize Yerushalayim as the capital of Israel, because all the church fathers said that the Jews would never return. And that's why it took the Vatican so long to recognize Israel's sovereignty. The Jewish people would never return back to the land of Israel. And certainly not true. All the church fathers said that Adarabah, that the low state of the Jew in his exile, and that he would never return to Yerushalayim. And remember, in the 4th century, when Rome became Christian under Constantine, the Harabayas was all just destroyed. There was nothing. And the Christians looked at that with nachas and joy of a churban on the Harabayas, showing that that temple was done with. Judaism was finished. And Augustine, in his magnum opus, The City of God, talks about this, that the Jew is only a witness people. The world should look at the Jew, observe the Jew in his low state, and then people should realize that this is what happens to a Jew to those who reject the Lord and moreover murder him. The work of helping Jews in the church is exciting. It's exciting because we have a common text. There are new phenomena that are occurring right now. Many of you know this, that there are evangelical Christians who are posing as Orthodox Jews, who have infiltrated Orthodox communities worldwide. As we speak right now, one of the most Jewish areas of Chicago, Rogers Park, has a family right in the middle of the whole thing that looks like someone who belongs in Mea Shearim. And they're there right now. We had a case in Eretz Yisrael where we had a man who was a moil, he was a sefer, he had a bezdin, he was a kayan, and it turns out he was not Jewish, and I exposed him. We have right now, as we're speaking, in Phoenix, Arizona, the Dawson family, complete goyim. If I showed you the picture, I didn't bring it, you see a Chassidish man with a Chassidish levush, and his son looks more Jewish than anybody in this room. And they're running a shul in Phoenix, Arizona, as we speak right now, but they're going down. They're going down because I'm exposing them constantly, and you're seeing this in the news repeatedly. We had an enormous case. If you watched the video that introduced me last night, we had evangelical Christians who bought up channel 182 on Hot TV. For those who don't know this, more than 50% of Israelis who subscribe to cable television subscribe to Hot TV. It's in 700,000 Israeli homes. And that channel was devoted, was purchased by God TV, and that channel was devoted to evangelize Israelis in the Hebrew language. And in Israel, so you're asking, is it legal to do such a thing? So there are 2 laws in Israel associated with evangelism. Law number 1 is you cannot evangelize a child. You can't expose a minor to evangelism. 33%, a third of Israel's population are people who are below 18 years old. Number 2 is you cannot provide remuneration for getting baptized. We shut that down, and that was very exciting. That guy you saw at the opening in the video last night, Ward Simpson, that Ward Simpson rose up and accomplished more in 15 minutes on television, talking how we have to bring 9 million Israelis to Christ. He accomplished more in that 15 minutes than I did in 40 years. We shut it down in Eretz Yisrael. So the work goes on. But as I say to you, is the answer in order to stop this cancer in our midst, is the answer that we should train our sons and daughters in the Christian Bible, that we should know the New Testament by heart? You'd be wasting your time. Kindlech, know the real thing. Know your own Tanakh. Know Sefer Yeshayahu. If you know your own scripture, no missionary will be able to rob you of a faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The work goes on. My YouTube channel is fairly large in the Jewish world. It's just my name, Tovia Singer. And there you could watch how I respond to Christians extemporaneously. All my shows that I do are live, they're unscripted. People call in from around the world and I respond to it. I will be, this is the first time announcing it, I will be engaging in a debate with a Christian theologian in Nashville, Tennessee this coming May. And you're all welcome to join me. But we're going to have a very, very good time. On behalf of Outreach Judaism and really all the people that we've helped over the past 40 years, I thank each and every one of you for for joining me here today. Thank you. We do. So what I'm going to do is I think we have like 10 minutes of questions. Is that correct? So let me do that. So if any have questions, we're going to do that. I'll take your question and then your question. What's that?
Repeat the question.
I will repeat the question, sure.
Two short questions. One, do all Christian denominations believe that to bring back the Jews, the Messiah, their Messiah will come? Is that all the Christians?
No. So liberal Christians don't believe that at all. I don't know really what they believe. But for example, Episcopalians don't believe that and don't care about that.
Is it important we know which Christians?
Yeah, so it's the fundamentalist evangelical born-again Christians, and if you think that's marginal, that's the largest voting bloc in the United States. Roughly 70 million Americans identify as an evangelical fundamentalist dispensationalist. Dispensationalist means that they believe that the Jewish people are still chosen. And in fact, Israel, not just Tel Aviv, but every square inch of Israel belongs to the Jewish people, and the Jewish people must be in the land of Israel. James Balfour, the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, was a dispensationalist, as many of the founder of the Red Cross. So it's only them. The Hillary Clinton type Methodist, liberal, they're not into this. They're not into this at all. It's specifically the fundamentalist evangelical born-again Christians. What I'm suggesting is we're not getting a free lunch. It's dafka, those who are pro-Israel. They are the only people who are involved in a systematic way in evangelizing Jews. I know that's troubling to hear. There's a young lady back there. Oh, no, okay. Yes, sir.
I just had one quick statement, then I want to ask your opinion. I was looking for one knockout blow. So what I've been using is, according to your theology, the Nazi that killed 20,000 innocent children because he believes in this man God of yours is going to go to heaven, but all the 20,000 innocent children are going to burn forever. Do you believe that? Is that true? Does that make sense to you? To me, that shakes them up. Do you have any others?
Well, I'll give you your first training session on how to speak to an evangelical Christian. First of all, you ask the question, if you asked a Christian, the Jews who, I'll give you a very troubling anecdote. In the late 1950s, Israel captured the most wanted, one of two of the most wanted Nazi criminals, and brought him from Argentina to Israel to stand trial for crimes against humanity. His name, he was the architect of the Holocaust. His name was Adolf Eichmann. The prosecutor in the case was Gideon Hausner. He has a book, good reading, called Justice in Jerusalem. Eichmann was found guilty for his crimes, and he was sentenced to be executed on May 30th, 1962. 2 days before his execution, he requested a Dutch confessor. And although the Kedoshim that he murdered did not have the opportunity to sit with the Rav before they were murdered, Israel permitted him to sit with a minister. And he accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior. 2 days later, he was executed. In Christian theology, if his conversion was genuine, he went to heaven, and the Jews that he murdered, after all, they didn't believe in Jesus, they're in hell. This is a very troubling reality for the church, but most Christians just don't think that way. It might touch someone, but in all my years I've never presented that. The reason is there's a difference between what are true things that are very troubling things and what actually gets people out of Christianity, and in Kiev in general, what's effective. And what's effective is not going in like a bulldozer and destroying the opponent, but rather asking them to tell me what's important to you and respond to their questions. When I debate, I always go second. So if those of you who watched my debates with Christians over the years, I always go second. It means they make their point. And if you notice, I don't have any notes with me. I don't come with any laptops and schmaptops, nothing. I have no agenda. I don't know what I'm going to say. I listen to what he says, and then I respond. I use my opponent's arguments as a way to bounce off, to gain the energy to then just completely destroy it and show it's connected to Torah. So if the goal is, and I know it is yours, to help this lost soul come back to the truth and beauty of Judaism, while what you said is true, but ineffective, it is so explosive that it's very hard for them to deal with that. And I don't think that's persuasive in the way you want it to be. It would certainly make them think. Moreover, one of the reasons why I find that approach doesn't work very well is that many of the Christians they meet are just nothing like that. And the people they meet, the Christians are really nice evangelicals, John Hagee types, and therefore it doesn't resonate with them. So it's true, yes, the church believes, Mark chapter 16, verse 16, if you believe within you're baptized, you're saved, and you believe not, you're damned. Right, yes, sir.
As I understand, being that Nefesh B'Nefesh is largely funded by Texas evangelicals, is Nefesh B'Nefesh our friend?
Is Nefesh B'Nefesh?
Our friend?
Yeah. Nefesh B'Nefesh really tries hard. And it's true that evangelicals give a lot of money to it, but Nefesh B'Nefesh is run by some really precious souls, and I know some of them, and I know a lot of them. And they try really hard to weed out who the missionaries are. If a Jew converts to Christianity, whether they call it Messianic or whether they call it Catholic, a person cannot make Aliyah under the law of return. And the problem we have is that once they get in, once they get in the door, it's almost impossible to undo it. Michael L. Cohen came in as a Jew. If I told you how he got Jewish papers, you would lose your mind how he pulled this off. But anyways, he got Jewish papers, and he was running a business as far as they were concerned. So now to undo Michael L. Cohen's citizenship is nearly impossible. Once getting in is challenging, or could be challenging for some people, but once you're in the system, it's very, very hard for Israel to take away your citizenship. But no, the Nefesh B'Nefesh really does an amazing job, and they're worthy of support. And yeah, evangelicals give, and they don't give because they're trying to convert Jews to Christianity. They are giving because they believe that in order for Jesus to make a second coming, the Jews have to be in the land of Israel. In one sense, this idea, which was promoted in the 19th century by John Nelson Darby, born in England, came to the United States and preached these ideas. It wasn't an anti-Semitic thing or a conversion thing. He believed that the church had been wrong up until this point, and in fact the Jews must be in the promised land. They are chosen. The chosenness can never be abrogated in Tanakh. In Tanakh it's very clear that the covenant that God made with Israel is forever, and therefore the Jews must come back to the land of Israel. And it was Christians who had enormous impact on American thinking. Enormous. The Schofield Bible, all of that, Moody, all these preachers all preach that the Jews have to return back to Israel. So Nefesh B'Nefesh is doing a terrific job, and I'm very proud of them, and I work with them very closely. Okay? Any other questions? Yes?
So, I understand how the missionaries...
Just speak a little louder.
I understand how the missionaries would be a threat to unaffiliated Jews. I don't understand the missionaries that plant themselves in very Orthodox circles. Like, do they even have a chance? Is it a threat to people that are living a Torah life, the missionaries? Like the guy in Israel, like that you mentioned with the base thing, like what are they doing in a Jewish...
We don't know each other. I don't know you.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that you would be pained, deeply pained, if tonight you went home and went on YouTube and watched a Satmar girl standing in a baptismal pool in New York, accept Jesus as the Lord and Savior and being baptized. I think you'd be troubled in Eretz Yisrael to meet people who are mamish Hasidim, they get involved in these groups, who come from Hasidic homes. That was one of the things that persuaded me that I had to come to Eretz Yisrael, is because I was watching, observing Jews who come from a Haredi background who were getting involved in this. And you're going, how is it possible? What happens is that there are a lot of people who have a tzebrach in their hearts. They have a broken heart, shattered dreams. There are people in the Haredi community who feel betrayed by the very people that should have protected them. They feel alienated, isolated. They look in the mirror and they don't see someone pretty or attractive. They see someone ugly and they feel alone in the world. And the Christians were there and we weren't. Aryeh Kaplan, Zachrein Levracha, many, many years ago, who wrote a small book about missionaries for NCSY, said to me, he said, for many of these kids, it's just a matter of who gets to them first. So in the Hasidic world, look, there's quite a few kids. My Hebrew is pretty good. My Yiddish is fluent. There's quite a number of people that I counseled in Yiddish because the conversation went smoother. I know this seems almost but it is. But it's not from the passages, it's not from the verses. It's the Christian that was nice to them. She was struggling in an abusive marriage. And look, you know the deal. You know the problems. I don't need to tell you. These are the people who are very vulnerable. And by infiltrating the Hasidic community, there's special online. If you write to me, I'm going to put my cards here. I'm going to put my cards right up here. There are missions just to convert Baba Hasidim to Christianity. There are special missions just to convert Satmar Hasidim to Christianity. And they teach all about all the traditions and customs of those communities, how to dress and so on. It's not an accident that Chosen People Ministry, the oldest mission to Jews in the United States, built their center in Flatbush. This is not an accident. They're there to convert Jewish people who come from Orthodox homes. We have time for one more question, yes?
As a postscript and a point of curiosity, when you were initially in Jaipur for the 3 days, how did you get the 516 folks to learn Shalom Aleichem?
They didn't. They knew it from their grandparents.
Really?
Yeah, that's all they knew. All they knew was Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem. That's all they knew. So they sang it beautifully. So these were all Jews. That means they knew they were Jewish. Look, Indonesia, there hasn't been a rabbi there since World War II, right? And Indonesia was very excited to have me there. The Muslims happened to love me as a caveat, and they actually called me the chief rabbi, although I didn't have any competition. It wasn't like running against anybody. But they all knew that they were Jewish, and they remember it from their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. So therefore, that was the song they knew. That's all they knew was Shalom Aleichem. That was it. And it was sung, which I can hear it now. They took the roof came off. They sang it with Kol Ram, with such joy and such excitement. And again, a Wednesday night, on the island of Papua, an enormous island shared by two countries, and hearing Shalom Aleichem and hearing them, and this is their way of accepting Ol Malchus Shemayim. I mean, it was just.
Oh, and also, I'm sure you're aware, the largest real estate landholder in New York City is the church.
Yes, yeah, and so goes in Yerushalayim as well. All right, I'll take one more question. Yes.
So there's a lot of people that are involved in Kiruv, but I've never heard of so many people getting involved with fighting off the Christians. Do you feel like that there's a need for that as well? I'm saying, do you mean meaning that you think that there should be more of a movement, that more people would get involved with that kind of thing?
Oh yes, there's a reason why I have a fairly large YouTube channel, and part of the reason is I don't want to die with the recipe. In order to do what I do, it can't be part-time. It's those of you here who know me, and some of you do know, this is all I do. From when I wake up till I go to sleep, and sometimes it's very late, is I'm talking to people in the church or helping families. This is all I do. And I'm broadcasting, usually on average about 3 interviews a week. I'm just doing a lot of it. But part of it is, I should live to 120, but part of it is that I want this information to be out there. I wrote those books so that I don't want anything to die with me. So the information is there. When I wrote Let's Get Biblical, when I did the audio series back in the early 1990s, I did it because I wanted to preserve the information so that others would understand. So yes, there are other people who, to one degree or another, are, I guess, trying to do what I'm doing, but in fact, it just, because the question I'm asked very frequently, but it just requires a person to devote you have to devote your entire life to this. It's not a part-time thing. This is not, and it's just a specialty that's so narrow. There's so few people that do it that there are not that many people who there are some, and there are so many people who are learning more and more, and that's mamish gewaldig, that's fantastic, but it does require also a strong stomach. You're reading toxic Christian literature. Let me tell you, I'm not encouraging any of you to read the Gospels, but if you read it, you would be mortified to see how anti-Jewish, how anti-Semitic it is. You don't realize what's in it, and if you did, you wouldn't hate Christians so much. What I mean by that is that the text is it's the protocols of the elders' design. It's basically a conspiracy about how the Jews conspired to kill Jesus. And they knew that he really was Messiah and did it anyway. That's why the Jews in Christian theology, and especially in the New Testament, are characterized as the devil. Why are Jews called the devil? And it literally says that in John chapter 8, verse 44. So this is a very deep point, that the Jews are the devil. What does that mean, that you're the devil? So most people don't understand what's pshat, the devil. So it's rather a sophisticated theology. In Christian theology, the devil is a very unique creature. If you ask a Christian, does the devil really know that Jesus is the Messiah? Does he know the truth? So every Christian will say, yes, he does. But he denies, and he's the arch enemy of God no matter what. In Judaism, we're using the word Satan, meaning a certain way. Satan is an angel or an entity that is working for Hashem to give us free will. Before you, I place life and death, good and evil. You must choose life that you may live. So Satan is, in the words of Rav Victor Miller, a bracha. Because without Satan, there would be no bechira. We were created b'tselem Elokim, and virtue would be impossible. In Christian theology, this is all unknown. The devil was really the highest of all angels, called Lucifer, and he, because of his arrogance, went to battle against God, and he is an enemy of God. He knows the truth, but because of his arrogance, this is very pagan. Those of you who study theology and world religion, highly dualistic. This idea you'll find in the Persian gods, in the Levant, and far beyond. So therefore, when the church identifies the Jews as the devil, what they are saying is they're not saying that the Jews never don't understand. Yes, when they go to Africa and they find people in some tribe and they don't know, they never heard, we'll preach the gospel, they'll hear. To them, the Jewish people know the truth. That's why we put 3 matzahs in the Passover Seder, because we really do know about the Trinity, but we deny him anyway, and only the devil can do that. And that's why the Germans could say about the Jews that they are Untermenschen, subhuman. What does that mean, subhuman? Subhuman means that they are enemies of God. Not because of their lack of knowledge, it's because of their knowledge. And according to Paul, all of the Gospels record that the Jews really understand, but God has put a veil over their eyes, 2 Corinthians chapter 3 and 4, and they just are blinded by this. The Jewish people are miraculously blinded, and they are the enemies of God. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 14 through 16. If you read it, you'd think you're reading a Ku Klux Klan manual. I mean, it's very, very ugly, so there's the answer. Okay, any other question?
We all can't dedicate our time, full time for this.
Could you say that?
Considering we all can't dedicate our full time for this entire project, what's the takeaway? What's the message to all of us, regular lane, everyday people?
Yeah, I want to recruit. So you're asking someone who's biased, right? So I have a dog in this race. I hope that one of you here will decide that, you know what, I'm going to study this a little bit more. And when the first Jew you meet who's in the church does tshuva, it's going to change who you are as a person and will change your goals in life. Maybe. Okay? So I want to be very transparent here. I hope that some of you will listen to the sometimes difficult words you've heard here this morning, and you'll begin to study this material, and you will make a decision in your life that you want to bring back the Nidchei Yisrael, the Jews who are in the darkest place, back to the truth and the beauty of the Jewish faith. Thank you very much for having me.